Now, when I first heard about AI for language learning, I have to admit I was pretty skeptical. I've read all the doomsday novels, I've heard the wild predictions about what a computer run amok could do to the world.
Shall we play a game?
And don't even get me started on AI-generated images. I mean, if a computer can't even figure out how to make humans look right, how is it ever going to be able to teach someone a new language? But then my friend Mia decided that she was going to put AI to the ultimate test, and well, I wanted to see how she was going to do. The big question, of course, can she go from this
Não sei se é o color
to fluent in just 30 days?
My name is Mia Dahl and I come from Denmark, but I live in Mexico City. I know a bit of Brazilian Portuguese. So I once did an exchange semester in Sao Paulo where I tried to learn Brazilian Portuguese, but that's a few years ago and I feel like by now I pretty much forgot everything I've learned.
Now, Mia is a journalist and she loves languages. In fact, she's passionate about learning Brazilian Portuguese. And this is a project right after my own heart because I myself spent a long time learning Portuguese when I was in my early 20s back in the day. The rules of the challenge are simple. She has 45 minutes a day, no more, 30 days to complete it, and she's only allowed to use AI resources, specifically from the website Langua. Now, how does Mia feel at this point?
I definitely feel like I wouldn't be able to already to have like a conversation with a native speaker on the street at this point. It would just be not only too awkward, just too difficult. I think now I'm kind of excited to get maybe not back to the books, but back to the app and the website Langua Talk to actually start learning and hopefully see some progress and feel a little bit less awkward.
So what can you expect going into a language challenge at this level? So Mia's level is what you might call pre-intermediate. So it's like a high beginner, low intermediate level. It's the level that you might be at after a couple of years of learning a language at school, kind of semi-seriously. You know a fair number of words, but not all that many. You know a little bit about the grammar and you're familiar with some of the grammar of the language, but not that much. And so it's a general air of like kind of getting the look and feel of the language, but really not being that secure and really not knowing enough to be able to actually communicate.
In the next 30 days, I'm going to try to set myself 3 key goals. First, I want to be able to hold 15-minute conversation with a native speaker without having too many pauses or interruptions and without feeling extremely embarrassed. And then second, I have this book that I bought when I was on exchange that was called O que faz o Brasil, Brasil, what makes Brazil, Brazil. And I really want to read it, but I've never really been able to. So I think my first goal would be to just be able to read a chapter in that book without having to stop every other moment and giving up. Essentially, I want to be able to read the whole book. It's rather short. And then my third goal is to be able to listen to a 30-minute podcast and sort of be able to summarize the main ideas in Portuguese.
Goal setting is a very difficult thing in language learning because you never know exactly how fast you're going to progress. You can say, well, I'm going to learn 10 words a day, but what happens if you don't remember those 10 words a day? Do you just pack it in, throw away your goals? It can be very tricky. So the best kind of goals to have with language learning are what I would call process goals. And these are the kind of goals where you say, right, well, I'm going to study for 45 minutes a day. I'm going to take 30 days for this challenge. So you can't control exactly the result of your efforts, but you can control the effort that you put in at the beginning. And so process goals like this are really, really useful because it allows you to make a reasonable guess that, if I try my best, I can expect to get a fairly decent result. Now, Mia is going to be using Langua, and Langua is a fantastic website that uses a lot of really kind of cutting edge AI tools, from listening to reading, but also to speaking, where you can communicate with chatbots. And you're going to see her using Langua throughout this video.
Oi, tudo bem? E você? Sim, eu estou pouco perdida aqui em Curitiba, porque eu nunca he visitado, I'm not sure how to say this, Curitiba antes. Você me pode ajudar para encontrar uma farmácia?
Tem uma farmácia muito boa aqui perto, na rua 15 de novembro. É a rua principal do centro. Mas já que você está aqui, depois você precisa conhecer o Jardim Botânico, que é o cartão postal da cidade. Você pretende ficar quantos dias em Curitiba?
Okay, so now I'm a little bit unsure because I don't really know. Yeah, no, I think I understand this. But just to be sure, I'm going to check for a translation here. Yes, I got it right, I think. This is actually pretty cool. She gives me an answer and she even talks about the actual city. So I'm not only learning a bit of Portuguese now, I'm also learning about Curitiba. Here it shows you an alternative, right? So eu pretendo passar 5 dias aqui em Curitiba. Nice.
So what Mia has done in this first week is just get used to the tools that she's using. And I think in any kind of language project, you need a bit of orientation. Like, you don't hit the ground running on day one knowing exactly how to use the books and the audio and all the different resources that you've got. And it's no different with AI. You need to spend a little bit of time figuring out exactly what it can do, what it can't do, how it can help you, how you enjoy using it yourself. And I remember with many language projects that I did myself, the first week was often just one of kind of experimenting, gathering resources, just figuring out what's going to work for me. And that's time well spent, because it means after you wrap your head around the tools that you've got, you can then really focus on better studying from that point on.
I traveled to Poland to go to a reunion with some university friends. So it's been a lot of hours on planes, in buses, in airports, waiting around. So I thought to myself, I wanted to check out the Langua mobile app. And just to have a bit more flexibility while I was like waiting or on the run, and to be able to do some of the exercises on my phone. Now I'm going to show you what the Langua app looks like. This is what it looks like when you open it. So one thing I tried this weekend was the games section. I tried this one with practice describing things.
Olá, vamos jogar um jogo para praticar descrições em português? Pense em alguma coisa. Pode ser um objeto, uma pessoa ou algo abstrato. E me descreva sem dizer o que é. Quando você estiver pronto, me diga. Já pensei em algo.
Okay, so this was the game I was playing this weekend. I really liked it because it's actually a game that I used to play with my friends in school sometimes. So it feels a bit nostalgic. Já pensei em algo.
Ótimo! Por favor, me dê a primeira descrição do que você está pensando. Como é ou o que faz?
Eu estou pensando em uma criatura.
Esta criatura é um animal doméstico ou selvagem?
É um animal selvagem, mas muito selvagem, na verdade. Eu quis falar que esse animal vive in the air. Can you help me say in the air in Portuguese?
Ah, então é um animal que voa. Seria uma águia?
See, so now it actually helped me say it lives in the air.
I often think that I can predict your success with a language based on how sustainable and achievable your plans actually are. There's absolutely no point saying, I'm going to study for 3 hours a day if you are falling asleep at the keyboard because you're so tired after work. You've got to make study plans that are sustainable. And the plan that says, I'm going to do 15 minutes every day in the morning and that's it, is much better than the plan that says I'm going to do 17 hours at the weekend. It's got to be sustainable. We also want to be doing it on a daily basis because a little bit very consistently is the key to success with languages. But you've got to be able to adapt. And it's really important if one day you can't do the things that you set out to do. You've got to be able to adapt and say, okay, well, maybe I couldn't read for half an hour, but I am going to spend 15 minutes on my flashcards or whatever. And one of the great things about AI is it does allow you to be very, very flexible with the way that you study. For example, being able to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes speaking without having to book a lesson a week in advance.
What I found over the past week is that when you sit one-on-one with an AI tutor, it's like a very safe learning environment. So it sort of made it easier to just do a bit more trial and error and let loose while learning. And I think the thing that has been really cool with Langua is that it sort of adapts to your level. I find that it's like really good for relearning a language because unlike a textbook or Duolingo and some of the other apps that I've sometimes tried out, you don't have to start from level 0 and then go through every painful exercise to get to the level that you're actually at. With Lingua, you just like, it sort of adapts to where your gaps are, really. It was really cool because we could always talk about things that I found relevant while I still managed to, practice my Portuguese. And then another feature that I really like is that AI actually sort of gets to know me along the way, right? So I could talk about a lot of fun topics about my personal life. At some point, I talked about the time when I was working as an au pair in Paris. And it gave me some really good memories. It's fun how AI remembers the names of the people that you mentioned to them, and then they will ask you follow-up questions. So I think I had quite a lot of fun with that. And then at the same time, the cool thing is that AI allows you to shift conversations whenever you want, right? So if I would get bored of a conversation, I would just tell it, oh, you know what? Now I prefer talking about climate patterns in Central America. And AI wouldn't feel offended in any way that I didn't find the conversation so interesting anymore. Unlike in real life, where I think that could have been pretty impolite, right? So I think that's been really cool. It's been quite a fun experience so far. Later today, I'll have an interview with some climate change experts. And I want to try to see if the AI tutor can help me prepare for the interview that I'm going to conduct. Now we're going to try to do the conversation with AI.
Oi, como você está hoje? O que você quer conversar?
Oi, tudo bem, e você? Hoje eu gostaria de conversar sobre o câmbio climático, especificamente na América Central e no Honduras. Eu gostaria de falar sobre a adaptação climática e o que se pode fazer para preparar-se melhor para esse tipo de eventos climáticos. How do you say housing in Portuguese?
A palavra que você procura é moradia.
So here's the word that I actually asked them about in Portuguese, and it helped me. Let's hear the pronunciation again. Moradia. I'm just gonna add it to my list of words to practice now. Okay, I'm just gonna take you to the Langua app to show you what it looks like to practice with the flashcards on the app. There are two options. You can either practice the vocabulary by blending it into a chat, or you can practice the vocabulary word by word. Now I'm going to choose it word by word. I'm going to do a random selection because I really haven't practiced most of my words yet.
Oi, vou mencionar cada palavra que você salvou e fazer perguntas relacionadas para que você possa usá-las em suas respostas. Vamos começar. Tiver. Se você ganhasse na loteria, o que você faria com o dinheiro?
Okay, so I think now I'm a little bit lost because I know tiver should be some form of to have, but I'm not really sure. So let me just click and get some help. Yeah, so it's like to have, I feel like I need some more help to be able to actually construct a sentence. So I'm going to ask for some examples. Se eu tiver tempo, vou te visitar. If I have time, I will visit you. Ela ficará feliz se tiver notícias boas. She will be happy if she has good news. So I guess it's like a conditional sentence. Great. Now I'm gonna give it a shot. Se você ganhasse na loteria, o que você faria com o dinheiro? Se eu tiver muito dinheiro, eu acho que viajaria pelo mundo.
Boa resposta. Você usou tiver corretamente.
So many people talk about being nervous when they are learning a new language and they finally get to the time when they are going to speak it with a native speaker. People often suffer from all kinds of anxiety around actually being face-to-face with someone and having that real-time pressure of having to put words together, hopefully accurately, whilst also being face-to-face with another human being and the kind of social awkwardness that can come with that. Confidence is something that comes gradually, not as you just learn more words, but as you generally get used to the language. And this phrase, getting used to a language, really is what happens when you spend time every single day with a language. You can't always say exactly what it is that you've learned or exactly how much progress that you've made, but the fact that you have spent time in the company of the language is the thing that makes the language normal for you. And then it can cause your brain to join up these dots and to start to be able to understand and say things that you didn't even know you could understand or say.
So now it's been another week of language learning with Langua. I'm halfway through my 30-day challenge almost, and I wanted to share a few reflections on how this past week has gone. So first, I think I really realized the breadth of learning that you get when using Langua. Of course, you need to practice your listening, your understanding, your reading, and your speaking skills. I think my first week with Langua, I spent a lot of time talking to the AI tutor, which was really good because it helped me sort of figure out what my weaknesses are and what to focus on. But then over this past week, I've been able to work a little bit more focused on that. So I've been using the flashcards a lot more to train my vocabulary, and I've been able to practice grammar where I saw that I kept making some of the same mistakes or having difficulties. So I think unlike when you take classes and you have like a fixed routine going to a classroom, having classmates, with this kind of self-learning, you need to stay accountable a bit more on your own, right? I think what helped me there is to have a fixed routine. So the fact that I have this 45-minute goal for every day helps me stay sort of accountable to my learning process.
Now, by the way, if you're wondering about the best way to use AI for language learning, I've put together a PDF for you with some tips for this. Specifically, you're going to find some detailed study plans that you can follow to help you set up your language sessions with AI. And I think you'll find this useful, especially if you are new to this technology. So to get this PDF, it's completely free. You can grab your phone and scan the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description, and it's going to take you to my story learning kit. Now, once you're inside the kit, look for the bonus section and you will find the PDF in there.
So now it's been 3 weeks. Time is really flying and I'm starting to feel better about my Portuguese. I really like how the feedback reports are presented. They always tell you what you did well, your areas for improvement, and then it gives you some very specific examples of things that were corrected during the conversation. And then it ends with these like fun cultural tips about Brazil and Portugal. And then it, of course, offers you help on how you can improve these topics.
The language learning process really is one of kind of ups and downs and peaks and troughs. And the thing that separates people who succeed from those who fail are people who develop this ability to carry on regardless. I've learned 8 languages, and one of the big advantages of having gone through the language learning process this many times is that I know that even if there are weeks or months where I don't feel like I'm making much progress, I know for a fact that I am still learning. My brain is still taking stuff in. It's just that it's not apparent and it can feel like you're even stepping backwards. The most important thing is to carry on and trust in the process, because if you do, that is when there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know exactly when you're going to get there, but one thing's for sure, you're not going to get there by giving up and walking back the other way. The way to get there is by carrying on and sticking to that consistency, doing a little bit every day, because then the confidence comes, the breakthroughs eventually come, and that's also where things start to get really, really fun.
Hi guys. So today I was a bit short on time, so I decided I would practice Portuguese literally on the run. So Langua gives you access to this library of podcasts in Portuguese, which are really cool, and I found one that I really like called Historia em Meia Hora. It gives you sort of like small history lessons in about half an hour. And today I learned a bit about the history of Mexico. I also listened to another episode about Frida Kahlo, a famous Mexican artist.
So the end of the 30 days is quickly approaching. How did you do?
Eu acho que são diferentes porque duas das imagens têm mais que uma pessoa. Uma das imagens tem só uma pessoa que está sozinho com sua computadora. So now it's been 30 days of practicing Portuguese through Langua, and I want to give you some thoughts about how this whole project went. First of all, I completely fell in love with Langua. It's really become part of my daily life. I feel way more motivated to practice and learn other languages. Not just because it's become a fun routine, but also because I feel like I could definitely feel the progress, even in just 30 days. When it comes to the SMART goals that I set myself from the beginning, I accomplished all of them. First one was to hold a 15-minute conversation with a native speaker. I did that with Rodrigo the other day, my tutor. I felt way more confident this time. And I actually even just texted a Brazilian friend from when I was on exchange to catch up with him as well in Portuguese, which is something I would not have done before this project. Second, I set myself a goal of reading a chapter in this book that I was recommended when I did my exchange in Brazil years ago. And I actually read not just one chapter, but 3, and understood all of the main ideas. So check. And third goal was to listen to a 30-minute podcast and get the main ideas. I've done that several times by now. Actually, it's become another part of my routine to once in a while listen to some podcasts in Brazilian Portuguese when I go on my run, all on Langua. But then what did my tutor, Rodrigo, said, because we had this session on day 1 and then again on day 30. He told me he saw a lot of progress in fluidity, in confidence, in mixing in less words in Spanish, which is something I did a lot in the beginning. He said that there's, of course, still some gaps, like the gender of words, pronunciation of certain words. And he suggested that I would just gain more experience using Langua, using the flashcards, pretty much as I've done. So I think that's exactly what I'm going to do from here. I'm going to continue using Langua. I feel really motivated to keep improving my Portuguese. So yeah, I can really only recommend you doing this journey.
And it's very rare that a technology comes along which genuinely offers something new to language learners. I mean, the internet was one of the things which did really change the game, because suddenly you could access content in the language you were learning from around the world. And that meant that as a learner, you now had endless resources to use. That really did change the game. I felt that things like electronic flashcards were quite useful. It's just a much more efficient way to actually practice vocabulary. But overall, over the last 15 years, the number of apps that I have tried, language learning apps that I've tried for 15 minutes and then deleted, never to be seen again, it's always been such a letdown and such a disappointment. And that's when I've always kind of gone back to very traditional, very analog ways of learning languages, because I know that it works for me. And so when AI came along, that's why I was skeptical. I thought, here we go again, more technology. It's not actually going to change anything. But I think what you can see here from the way that Mia uses Langua and the opportunities that Langua actually affords to the learner really is a game changer, because what you're able to do now is interact with the language in a completely different way. You're able to get instant translations. You're able to talk with the AI, practice things that you're learning immediately with a human-like speaking partner immediately after having learnt it. You're able to generate stories to practice, specifically using vocabulary that you have saved. It really does change the game. But it's this speaking in particular and the ability to practice speaking whenever you want without the need to book a lesson a week in advance and pay for the hour of time. The ability to just go on and say, I'm just going to speak French for 15 minutes. For me, has changed so much for me, because I'm probably not going to book a 1 hour French lesson because I've got so much else to do. But when the inspiration strikes and I want to speak French for 15 minutes, I can just go and do it immediately. It really does remove a barrier, and it is creating an entire new world of opportunity for language learners who understand how to use the tools properly. And that's why people like Mia are able to stick with it and really make progress in their language. Now, throughout this video, you have seen Langua being used, and if you would like to try out Langua, you can sign up for their yearly plan and get 20% off with my code Olly20. That's effectively 4 months free versus paying monthly, and you can find all the information you need in the description below or by scanning the QR code on the screen. For Mia, it wasn't just about the learning, it was about fitting it into her real life, and that might just be Langua's biggest strength. When you find a language tool that can meet you where you are, that's where the real learning begins. And what are you going to do with your newfound language skills? Maybe something like this guy over here who made Mandarin Chinese part of his real life. His story is pretty wild. Check it out.